Okay, so once you've finished the draft phase and gone through the kind of cleanup phase, like Ian, no, sorry,
I'm not Ian.
you're not.
Villages. It ain't much, but it's honest work. It's also a card game by Hack on Whole Garda, where players are going to be kind of building their own villages in order to try to make the most prosperous village by earning the most gold. Essentially, it's going to be played over a number of rounds, which will be set up in the road at the beginning of the game, and the game ends when the roads run out, and by that point, you actually finish the game and tot up your scores at the end.
Okay, so in villages there are two sequences. So you start off with your draft phase, and then you go into your build phase. So with your draft phase, you have a selection of villages on what they call the road. So when you're starting out, there'll be a set of 6 you have to put down with the little sort of starting symbols, which is like a little kind of arrow. And then you have your pile of the rest of them that have been made up from the actual deck. So the way it works is you put down twice as many as there are players. So in our example, we're doing a 3-player game. So we've got 6 piles there, and each one's got 6 cards in. Yes, I had to do maths then. There's also a first market phase and a second market phase. So they're used for scoring. So basically that's how you kind of win the game, essentially. The first one is kind of more of the gold that's on the cards and the actual gold numbers. And the last one's going to be gold and silver and the coins that are on the cards. So you've also can choose, depending on how you want to play it, you can choose to pick the ones that you can see face up, or you can go in blind and take one randomly, as you will. Each player starts off by being able to take 2 people. There is a max, you can have up to 5, but you always have to sort of draw up to your max, and that's how it kind of works in the game.
So the drafting phase basically consists of going around the table, taking turns, drawing a card from the road. The number of times you'll draw is 2 plus however many food symbols you have on the cards, up to a maximum of 5. Now the things you want to be considering when you go to draw the card is firstly the suit. What have you been building? Are you looking to be someone who generates a lot of ore, someone who generates a lot of wood, someone who does things with hay? They're all at the top of the cards. So you'll have the black cards, which generally denote that they are to do with ore and mining. You have the green cards that have a wood symbol at the top, which denote that you're some sort of like woodworker or something like that. The teal coloured cards have grain on the very top of them. They're kind of like attached to your founders, which at the beginning of the game is going to be the only card that you're going to have in your village. You have the purple haze, which basically will be things like your thatchers and things like that. You have solitary cards, which will kind of have a cowboy hat on, which will be on brown cards. They usually sit alone in your village. You also have special cards, which will be noted with red, with kind of like a jester's mask kind of symbol at the top. And finally, you have the grapes, which are on kind of a purpley coloured suit. Other things you may want to be looking out for when you're drafting cards is there may be an unlocking symbol on them, which basically denotes how many other cards will be paying that card in order to be built during the building phase. You also have the amount of gold on the cards as well. That's how much gold they're going to be worth at the end of the game. Finally, you have building symbols on them, which is kind of a black house kind of symbol on it. Those ones, again, will be used in the building phase. They'll let you do more actions during that phase, which I'll let Daryl talk about in a bit. So basically, all you're doing when you're drafting is you're taking turns taking either one from the face-up cards in the centre, or you can draw one blind from the very top. After that, play moves to the next player, and you just all keep going around the table until you've taken as many turns as your food symbols allow you to. Okay, so one thing you do have to consider is when you take a face-up card from the road, you automatically have to replace it with cards from the leftmost stack. These stacks are going to be disappearing over the course of the game, so you're always going to be starting with the leftmost stack and then moving on to the next one as you're replenishing the line there. One thing you do have to consider is that if you at any point reveal the first market card, then you enter the first scoring phase. When you are done with the end of the round and everyone's finished drawing cards, you do have to remove any cards on there which already have a coin on them for any reason, and then you take coins equal to the amount of cards that are still on the road after that, and you place them on every single one. Then you're ready to enter the building phase.
So once you've finished the drafting phase and done all the cleanup, basically what you will do is take the cards off the village square and into your hand, and then you begin the building phase. So depending on how many characters have the little symbols like the sort of tiny little black house on them, you will build it again up to 2. So I will be choosing to put down a seeker, so again they go back into the village square. Now for a free move, I'm going to trade the brewer back into the pack, and then you get a chance to pick out one of the free here. So these are basically like the founders. So you've got a miner, a lumberjack, and a hayer. Now the way they work is basically the same as the founders. You would put them down on your village and be able to sort of build upon them. So if I was to take the miner, it wouldn't go straight to the village square, it would go straight on the thing, and that doesn't count as one of my actions. So now I can still choose to put down a glass blower. So once I'm done, I choose to move on to the next player. The next player would then do the same. They could choose to again trade in if they want to. You're allowed to do that up to a maximum of 3. And then once everyone's done, again you take them off the village square. It's a way of sort of keeping to know what you've got to come down, and also gives a way of people sort of spying on you to see if they need to be able to pay you or anything like that. So put it down, eventually I'll go, oh, I'll put it on the miner. So the miner and the hayer and the lumberjack are going to have sort of 2 symbols in the top corner. So basically it means you've got 2 paths on them. So you can kind of go, oh, I will put the seeker on that one, and I'll put the glass blower on the other one. As I've put down the glass blower, I've noticed that with the little lock symbol on there, I need a blacksmith. So I don't have one within my village to start off with, so I need to have to look around the table to see if either an opponent has one, or otherwise I'd have to pay the bank. So let's have a little look. So,
I have the blacksmith.
So Steve actually has the blacksmith, so it means I have to pay him 2 coins in order to unlock my glass blower. So now I can take my seeker out, place him down, and also place my glass blower down. And that's kind of how you kind of get away with sort of trying to, although it seems like the game is very much you're sort of stuck on your own little kind of micro puzzle and trying to build your own thing and make everything kind of really, really profitable for yourself. At the same time, you have to kind of keep an eye on everyone else's plays at the same time, knowing where you might be able to skip out on paying them money, hopefully not to try and make their village as profitable as possible. So that's kind of why you have this village square, because obviously you can kind of see what's going on in other people's plays. It's kind of a nice little sort of insight on how they're going to be building, if they're going to be trying to build the perfect haystack or the perfect wooden carpentry kind of system. It's just a good way of kind of keeping you on top of everyone's game.
It's a real shame you didn't have that blacksmith, or otherwise the bank would have paid you money.
That's the thing, yeah. So once you kind of, it's almost like, yeah, you're basically taking money from the bank. So if you can somehow get your own blacksmith out there, or a carpenter or something like that, it's going to be one of those things where, like I say, it unlocks 10 different cards within the suits, so it's a really useful card. There are others that are similar. There's one that does 8, which is the carpenter. Again, another base level one. It's really good, but if, for instance, say Stephen had the blacksmith, I had the blacksmith, and our third player had the blacksmith, you choose where you put the money. And obviously, I'm taking money from the bank. Cha-ching!
Okay, so what kind of strategies would you employ in a game like this? Well, one is to get those builders that have lots of cards that pay them out on the table rather early. You see, the amount of coins that go on them, it will actually be counted up both in the first market phase and the second market phase, meaning any gold that's on that card is going to be counted twice if you get them on there early enough. Another thing you want to pay attention to is the build queue of cards. So in other words, at the top of each card, there's going to be a row of jobs there. That's basically going to list how many cards can go on top of each one, building longer queues so you can strategize as to what cards you're going to get when. Me, I like to play big. I like to play big or go home. So I like to play the Grapes cards, which have a massive score if you manage to get all 3 in a row. In fact, why not just call me Mr. Grapes?
See, I'm not about the wine. I'm all about ore and hay. So you can call me Mr. Hay. Now the way I work is I like to get stuff with the symbols. So sure, Stephen's kind of making it big of his trading his wine, but I've already started making the minor ore section into my jeweler. So my jeweler's already given me 20 coins at the end of the game, but because I'm comboing it with the hayer, I've got an ore mule, so I get 3 extra coins per every 2 symbols. So that's symbols all the way down the line of my ore. So I'm getting coins for that. But I've also got the horse trader, so the horse trader will give me another 3 coins depending on every 2 hay stacks I've got. So as you can see, I have got all the hay. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8. That's another 8 hay bales. And then 2, 4, 6 on the glass. So I'm earning a lot of money.
Me, on the other hand, hey, if I get 2 of those rows down, I'm making a cool 28 points at the end of the game if I manage to score it big. See, the problem with the Great Game is that these guys aren't even buildable in the first place. You have to be lucky enough to grab one in the first place. It's a gamble, but if it pays off...
This is the thing, yes. I have obviously got most of my things from the very basic levels, so I can kind of start this very early. It does mean, however, because I'm using about 3 different hayers, or 4 different hayers, I'm having to trade in a lot of cards, so it's very much about kind of finding what you don't really need, or necessarily if someone else has kind of started the grape game, for instance, I'm not really going to try and sort of muscle in on that kind of village. So I'm going to try and make mine all about kind of natural materials. I might even go down the carpentry ways just purely because of the fact that I can unlock some stuff and he may have to pay me for the luxury of that. So it's a case of kind of micromanaging him but also trying to build my game strong.
So one of the things I do want to mention at this point is that on the surface it seems like this game is all about you having your own little puzzle that you're focusing on, and there's not very much interaction with other people, when in fact actually you're keeping an eye on everyone's kind of comings and goings quite closely, because if you manage to sneak that person in that they're going to have to end up paying you money for, you could well be delaying their plans. They may not want to give you that money and save cards for later turns, which could massively disrupt them. There's actually a lot of strategizing as to how you're going to build your village depending on what other people are doing. Do you want to build all those early builders very soon in the game so everyone has to give you money quick, or do you feel like you're just going to focus on one thing? I mean, there's quite a few different routes you can take in this game, which is very, very satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to have your founders. Your founders is your building block. So realistically, grains-wise, you're always going to be able to build at least 2 paths on the founders. But that does mean once the founder's gone, they're gone. So they can be an early way of getting you extra cards, but you really need to be kind of focusing on at least some sort of end game plan. So whether that be wood, or hay, grains, grapes, or even solitary. So some of the solitary cards work really well in ways they don't need to be put down on top of cards. They can be literally on their own, but they will give you extra points at the end of them. And some of them, you know, like there's the priest, for instance. He allows you to give you another 3 coins for every 2 solitary characters you have. So there are ways you're not necessarily having to build an army of hayers, miners, lumberjacks, all this kind of stuff. You can kind of go around like a really weird way of doing it. And then also you've got the special cards. So the special cards will allow you to kind of sometimes trade out people, take a card from the bottom that you don't need, and you can kind of take it back in. So there's ways around stuff that really kind of make your village individual, basically. It's nice.
Okay, so one thing this game does have is a solo... I'm getting rid of these. One thing this game does have is a solo mode, which basically pits you against an AI called the Countess. Now, this mode is a bit frustrating. You see, in this mode, every single time you draft, so the game plays basically the same as normal, but every single time you draft a card, the Countess builds a card. That is absolutely insane. It means they're getting a massive head start over you. During the build phase, you do carry on building as normal with them not really doing very much. However, they do build 1 card blind from the stack. Now, that means you could get lucky with it. Not really, because you see, you also have these event cards that the Countess has, depending on the season. So there are summer cards and winter cards, I believe. And those cards will generate an event that happens. So it could be you get taxed, or one of your buildings gets burned down, or something like that. And the problem is if you get lucky with your draw on that card, you have to draw more events. If you get one that's only got a gold value that's relatively low, like I said, you draw more events. If it's high, you draw less events. So in other words, it lessens that. However, nothing quite balances out the fact that the Countess is constantly building and it just gets out of control so quick and I can never win it. And it's to the point that it is absolutely frustrating. And it's just a mode that I can't ever see me going back and playing. It's probably one of the few lowlights of this game, if I'm perfectly honest. Okay, so really, this is a fantastic little game.
Yeah, 100%.
So the closest game I can really think to compare it to is probably Machikoro, which I honestly think I prefer this to. You see, Machikoro has a lot of things that are out of your hands. Sometimes you can build a perfectly good city in that game and the dice roll just won't be with you and that will eventually cost you. However, in this is, apart from the draw of the cards and things like that, it's more or less all your control. If you're deciding to draw blind off a deck, that's kind of your choice. The only thing that's completely left up to chance is what's actually in the line when you first go to build. So really, I can see this being a Machikoro beater, and a lot of people love that game.
It's, for me, I really love the card artwork. I know it's really simple. You said it was really like twee and stuff like that, but I mean, I'll just show you the box. So obviously, it's a really simple, like kind of nice box, and then you just kind of open it up, and it's got the kind of little sort of almost, I want to say, maybe Holland kind of looking sort of towns and stuff with the clogs. It's very kind of, you know, anti. And then you've got what I think is probably one of the nicest things. Each kind of sort of section you want and stuff like that, they have these little dividers which give you everything like contents wise that was on them, so you can go just set it back up the way it was, you know, what's going to be on the road set up, how to set up the road, kind of stuff like that. There's a 4-player section where you've just got a few extra things like wool and leather suites. Again, it comes in this amazing tiny little kind of like cargo box, and then you've got another one as well, so that's for your coins to keep all your, like, your bank stuff in. You don't even need necessarily to use like a kind of plastic bag. It's got a really nice, you can kind of go, oh, I just need a bit from the bank kind of thing, which is really, really cool. And it all fits really well back in the box. So for me, I was really, really sold on looks more than anything else. It took me a little while to kind of get into it, but once I did, once you realise the abilities you can do within the cards, like obviously there's a lot of symbols, so there's a little bit of kind of reading, but it's not so much like, say, I'm trying to think, like Sorcerer, for instance. There's so much to read on each card of those, and you kind of gets a little bit overwhelming. But I mean, let's just sort of take the Carpenter, for instance. So you've got your suite at the top, sorry, the suit at the top even. You've got the little symbol at the bottom that sort of tells you it's the starting card. The little black house which sort of tells you in the next kind of the building round you're going to be able to build like an extra 1 for that one, and again the little sort of lock which shows you can unlock 8 different cards with this. So realistically, you know from the sort of get-go, if you get a Carpenter, admittedly you will have to trade in one of your cards for a Lumberjack, for instance, but once you've done it, you know that someone at some point is going to have to pay you. Even if it doesn't mean they're paying you, you're probably not going to have to pay the bank. You're going to be able to pay yourself because you've unlocked the Carpenter kind of thing. So it works really well once you kind of understand the different houses and the different kind of abilities they all kind of trigger by kind of laying down with the next one. And I think that's cool.
If there was one other thing other than the solo mode that I think lets this game down a little bit, it was the instruction booklet. We did find that it took us a little while to actually wrap our head around. Whether it's the language they use in it is just not very clear, it just doesn't seem very well written. It took us a good couple of plays before we really understood how to play the game.
It's weird in a way because everything has the instructions on them in some way or another. So you've got a 2-player card that tells you kind of what to change rather than playing it on a 4-player or 3-player game. The village square on the back tells you the 2 turn phases and what you can do with them. And the first market and the second market, again, they also have exactly what you do with them. So it's almost like
So it is detailed everywhere. As long as you can understand the basic flow of the game,
once you've got
everything else
it,
is there.
it's really helpful. But it just felt like the initial part of the structure in the instruction manual was a little bit daunting and confusing, I would say.
I think it's because during setup, as we mentioned earlier, it says things, for example, like every stack on the 6 different areas of the road needs double the amount of cards on it than there are players at the game, and all of a sudden it seems like a bit of information overload.
Yeah, and the drafting phase, taking one back from the thing. I mean, we started taking them from the wrong pile to start off with.
Yes.
And then we realised it the next kind of time round, and then it was taking stuff from this pile to refresh, and then it was a case of the
I think
coins and stuff.
we both finished our first game with super big villages because we hadn't quite realised how to refresh the cards in there, so our game ended up going on way longer than it should have. And honestly, that's another one of the key elements of this. It goes by really, really quickly. It's a really good opening game. It's not one that you'd settle down and have an entire evening of.
No, it's definitely almost an entry game in a way.
It is, yes. So, really, I mean, I find it's very satisfying game as well. It always feels like whether you win or lose, you've always done something kind of cool over the course of the game. You've usually built something that you'll look at and think, oh, I did really well there. So, like, whether it's you've taken the chance of actually drawing a blind card and gotten something that just unlocks the rest of your game, or...
Which can happen.
Yeah, or whether you're the person that controlled where all the money was going in the game by having one certain person there, because that's not always enough to win you the game. But...
No, so for instance, one of the games we played, Steve, early on, got one of the cards that was controlling a lot of our plays, so we had to kind of pay him a lot. With that initial boost of money, he was making quite a head start. Within the kind of end game, in the end, we actually sort of almost all nearly finished on quite similar kind of points cost. So like I would say like 98, Steve was like 100, and then the third player was almost like 100 and something. But you know, so there are, it can always be really, really close, and each person was playing very differently. Like each person was trying every different suit, and I would say that's one of the nice things about it. It's not necessarily you are going to stay as Mr. Grapes or Mr. Hay or whoever. Like, it's a nice thing to try and experiment with the different cards. Like I say, the ore suite and the I keep saying sweet. The ore suit and the hay suit seem to work really well together, and I'm assuming the lumberjack works really well as well, considering they unlock a lot of things. So it's just trying to kind of optimize your village to make as easy as possible, not having to pay other people, and also getting your village as far ahead as possible.
Okay, so really at that, I think this is getting a big recommendation from us.
Oh yeah, massive.
I think whatever type of gamer you are, I feel like you'll get something out of this and get some form of enjoyment out of it, I feel. Because it's so quick anyway, and is designed fairly well as well. So by all means, this is a Everybody Dice recommends. So on that, I would like to say you can follow us on social medias, on Twitter at Everybody Dice and on Instagram at Everybody Dice Show. Our Patreon is, I think this is the first time I've really flubbed this up.
I think you've done it backwards. I think sometimes you try stuff at the start.
Possibly, yeah. Anyway, carrying on. Our Patreon, you can find us at patreon.com/everybodydice. You can find all of our things in one place at everybodydice.com. If you do feel particularly kind and do decide to become a patron, we do one of these every single month. So you guys actually get to choose the game we're reviewing from a choice of about 4 different ones. You also will get access to our newsletter. Also, we are on the verge of opening our Discord channel, which is pretty much ready to go at this point as well. So we're going to try and make some time every month to come over and have a chat on there. So yeah, maybe not the RPGs, but I'm sure we can figure something out. I mean, the Patreon's on there. I feel like we could give them something. Yeah, why not? Cool. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Bye.
Bye.